Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our weekly AJA Zoom event, and welcome to any new people who are watching for the first time this evening. We also have people watching on Facebook and people listening to the audio replay, which is broadcast every Thursday at midday and Sundays at 4 p.m. on J-Air Community Radio at FM 88 in Melbourne or at j-air.com.au. Welcome, everyone. My name's David Adler. I'm president of AJA, and we have a couple of our people who normally function as MCs overseas. Robert Gregory has just arrived in Israel, and so you're stuck with me again. Also on the screen, more importantly, is our guest tonight, Nadia Matar from Women in Green, although I understand the organisation has got a new name, which she'll explain in a moment. The format will be interview-style discussion, and then we'll open for questions. Raise your hand by using the reaction icon at the bottom of your screen. It'll be unlikely we'll be able to get to written questions because we're down on manpower a bit this evening. So Nadia Matar is co-founder and co-president of Women in Green Ribonut Sovereignty Movement, one of the more passionate, active organisations in support of Yehuda and Shomron, Judea and Samaria. We don't call it West Bank, although that's a term commonly used in the media. She will explain the work that she does. And it's interesting that this Shabbat, at least outside Israel, the Parsha is Shlach, where we learn about the Meraglim and their adverse report. We also learn that it was the women who actually wanted to proceed into the land of Israel. It was the men who got shaky knees. And I'm sure that Nadia is one of the women at the time reincarnated, from what I know of her work. So Nadia, welcome to AJA, and thank you so much for being our guest this evening.
Thank you, David. First of all, let's make sure, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
So I first want to thank you, and I want to thank AJA for your incredible work you're doing for Israel, for the Jewish people, and for our God-given right to our biblical heartlands. And it's not so easy, especially abroad, to be advocates of the land of Israel, and therefore we salute you too. We're partners.
It's a privilege to be regarded as a partner. So Nadia, for those that are not familiar about Women in Green, your organisation, can you tell us what it is, who's involved, why you were involved in establishing it?
I'll give you a little background. Yes, my name is Nadia Matar. I was born, I feel, 18 years ago, but according to the dry facts, it's already 57 years ago in Belgium, to a very Zionistic family. And I made Aliyah when I was 18. I met my husband, David Matar, who also made Aliyah from America. As a pediatrician with his whole family, and our dream was, and we understood that even when you make Aliyah to Israel, your job is not over. You still have to make Aliyah every day. To make Aliyah is to rise up to the challenge of how will I help my people in my land today, also when you live in Israel. And we decided on our first date already that we want to be part of the pioneers of the Jewish people, i.e. we want to live in what is called on CNN and the BBC the settlements in Judea and Samaria. And we moved to Efrat, and I might disappoint maybe a few people, but my dream was to be a housewife and active in the community, to do some learning. Thank God we have 6 children now and 9 grandchildren, and hopefully many more to come, not counting. But at the time when we moved to Efrat, we were just living there, being active, and then our life changed in 1993 when the Oslo agreements were signed, and all of a sudden the bubble burst. This country I came and made Aliyah to, all of a sudden my own Jewish government shook the hand of the mass murderer Arafat and made an agreement with him to give him parts of our biblical heartland, to build him an army, and to claim that he has rights to this land. At that time, we understood, despite us being a young mommy with young children, together with many thousands of others, we understood that we cannot continue and be quiet. And together with my mother-in-law and father-in-law in May really of 93, before the agreements already, when we felt, it doesn't matter now, I'm going to make it shorter, we created a movement that said we have no rights to give away the land of Israel. And when we read the Oslo agreements, we understood it will shrink us back, God forbid, to the Green Line, which is also known as the pre-67 borders. That is when we decided to go out on a campaign dressed in with green hats on the Green Line, on the pre-67 borders, with warning signs, wake up Israel. This is where, God forbid, they want to shrink us back to. That is when we were nicknamed the Women in Green. Even our official name was Women for Israel's Tomorrow. And for 93 to 2005, we basically were one of the most vocal movements opposing the Oslo agreements and saying we have no right to give away the land of Israel. It's suicide, it's crazy, etc. In 2005, as you recall, we had the terrible act of destroying Jewish homes in the Gaza Strip. We all tried to prevent that terrible disengagement or the expulsion from the Gush Katif, from the Gaza Strip, and from the northern Samaria, and we didn't succeed in stopping it. And when I had the privilege of meeting an incredible woman called Yehudit Katzover, and together we continued. We decided that when we came back from Gush Katif that now the battle is over Judea and Samaria. If we did not succeed in the Gaza Strip, we have to make sure that we at least will safeguard Judea and Samaria. My in-laws went and retired because of health reasons, and Yehudit Katzover, who's one of the pioneers of the renewed Jewish settlement in Hebron, that whole generation of people who, after the Six-Day War, when they saw that the government of Israel didn't know what to do with the victory of the Six-Day War, if I recall, if I can take a quick little second out of this, my story, Israel was founded in 1948 as mini Israel, without half of Jerusalem, without Judea and Samaria, without the Golan Heights. And when Israel was 19 years old, we were attacked on all fronts. The Arabs wanted to destroy us, and there's no other way to explain it. A miracle happened, and we won the war, and we returned, we conquered, we liberated. I have no problem with conquer either. If somebody takes something that belongs to me, I will conquer it back. And we returned to Judea and Samaria, the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, Jerusalem. And unfortunately, we declared victory, but it wasn't a full victory. Something was missing for that victory at the time. What the government of Israel at the time forgot to do was to also include the new borders within the law, within the legal frame of the state of Israel, and declare we won the war, and therefore all the areas that we return to, we will apply sovereignty over them, and they will belong to us no different than Ramat Gan, Beersheba, etc. That was not done, unfortunately. That's why it created so many troubles. Luckily, a group of heroes, pioneers, knew what to do, and when they saw the government stuttering and not knowing what to do in 67, they raised the challenge. I'm talking about Rabbi Moshe Levinger, Rabbi Hanan Porat, who basically created a movement of return to Judea and Samaria. Rabbi Levinger returned to Hebron, and Judith Katzover and her husband Zvi and many others joined and created a movement that today, thanks to that movement, we have 500,000 Jews living in Judea and Samaria. But unfortunately, the legal status hasn't changed for over 50 years since 60.
And your sound's just gone.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back now. Yep.
Yeah, I'm back now. And therefore, there's a question. The world started saying, wait a minute, if there's no sovereignty, is it yours or isn't it yours? So how dare you settle there if you don't apply sovereignty? Maybe it belongs to those people that invented people called the Palestinian people, who invented themselves as a people, and they claim it's theirs. And that's where the trouble started, when we didn't apply sovereignty. I'm going back to my story very briefly. After Gush Katif, I meet Judith Katzover, and we join forces to safeguard Judea and Samaria. We have a lot of local battles when we started seeing the Arabs taking over Area C. And at one point in 2011, Yehudit said, we're not going to safeguard Judea and Samaria if we continue to only focus on settlement. Of course, settlement is important, but while we spent so much money and effort on one little hill here and another little hill there. The Arabs, meanwhile, funded by billions of dollars by anti-Israeli NGOs, Oxfam, USAID, the European Union, they're taking over all over Area C, and we're going to lose this battle if we don't add another level to the battle. The national camp doesn't have a plan, says Judith Katzover in 2011. We only say no to a Palestinian state, no to giving them weapons, no to shake the hands of murderers. What is our yes? What do we suggest should be done? And that is when in 2011, we found that she said, Judith Katzover said, we must raise the flag, the plan of the application with 50 years of delay of what should have been done on the sixth day of the victory, of the so-called victory of the 6-day war, to complete the victory, and to finally say this land is ours and only ours. That's when we basically turned our movement into the sovereignty movement, promoting the application of Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. And since 2011, we of course also are involved in settlement. We created, in memory of the 3 boys that were kidnapped, a Zionist response of a beautiful forest that we turned into a Zionist educational place for teaching the youth about our history. But our main focus, and now I'm finishing to answer your question, our main focus over the past few years has been to promote the application of Israeli sovereignty as the one and only plan that is a plan that is good for Jews and Arabs, you might be surprised, and that says in one word, in one sentence, we will Israeli sovereignty between the sea and the Jordan River with an overwhelming Jewish majority and a non-Jewish minority that is loyal to the state of Israel. And we have newspapers, we have conferences, we also have a sovereignty youth movement after we understood that any movement needs to have a youth movement to be able to continue. We just had 1,000 people at our conference last week, 1,000 youth who promote the idea of sovereignty. And the last sentence I want to say, because we are on the one side very ideological and we say the entire land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel, but because our feet are also on the ground and we are practical also, we understand that we cannot be Harry Potter and apply sovereignty tomorrow over all of Judea and Samaria. And therefore we decided to promote as a first step the application of Israeli sovereignty over the Jordan Valley first, because the Jordan Valley is 30% of Judea and Samaria. There's no demographic problem of what shall we do with the Arabs, because in the Jordan Valley there's barely a few thousand Arabs, so the dilemma doesn't apply. And it is the eastern border of Israel. And if we apply sovereignty over Judea, over the Jordan Valley first, you also will prevent the creation of a Palestinian state. And thus, to summarize, we are now called the sovereignty movement. We promote the application of Israeli sovereignty over the land of Israel. We are proud Jews who live in Eretz Israel, and we also need another 2 million Jews to come and to keep this Jewish majority. And we thank you to give us a platform to explain.
Nadia, that's remarkable, but I've got a couple of obvious and practical questions. Firstly, when you say as a step, sovereignty in the Jordan Valley, that sounds very similar or not inconsistent with the Trump deal of the century. Did you have any influence in that? Was it something that you supported?
Absolutely not. We certainly appreciated the fact that President Trump declared finally Jerusalem as the capital of the city of Israel. But we were the first ones, you might be surprised to hear, to oppose the Trump plan. Because on the one hand, indeed, the Trump plan, and the deal of the century, as they called it, discussed and talked about 30% of Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. But as our friend, who now unfortunately is not with us anymore, attorney Eliakim Etzni said, it is poison wrapped in a candy bar, because parallel with the application of Israeli sovereignty, the deal of the century also called for creation of a Palestinian state on the 70% of the land that was not going to be under Israeli sovereignty. And obviously that had to be opposed, and that, thank God, the Trump plan was not applied. What we are calling for is the application of Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, the Jordan Valley first, and then the rest, and no to a Palestinian state anywhere between the Jordan River and the sea. They want to create a Palestinian state in France or in Saudi Arabia. I have no problem, but not by us. Israel, this is our land. The people who call themselves Palestinians, it is some invention. At the end of our talks to the youth, we meet a lot of youth who come to us in Osvegaon to hear about the different opinions about Judea and Samaria. They hear Arabs from the Palestinian Authority, which is another invention of the Oslo Accords, unfortunately. They hear people on the left, and they hear Judith and Nadia. And at the end, we tell them, you hear so many opinions about what should be done with Judea and Samaria. We summarize it in a very easy way, and we show them two books. We show them one book, which is the Bible, and we show them another book. I have it in the car here. I can show it to you, I think. It's called The History of the Palestinian People. It's a book with 100 white pages that are empty.
Yeah, I've got a copy of that.
And that's what you have to choose to, between the truth and those who are promoting a lie, between the truth and those who are promoting the destruction of the state of Israel, because the Palestinian people, or the so-called Palestinian people, only were created in order to destroy not only Judea and Samaria, but also Tel Aviv and Haifa and Beersheba. And we have to be able to say so. So many youth grow up today in Israel, I'm not talking even abroad, with such a lack of knowledge, because the educational system here in Israel, for so many years, didn't dare to tell the truth. And we are in touch with this current government, who little by little, you can't, it takes time, but we have to do so many changes and so many changes to educate the next generation, because there's a generation of Arabs being educated with lies, as if we never belonged to here, as if the Temple Mount was never the temple, as if this land was not ours. And on the other hand, we have a generation of Jewish children here in Israel who receive an education of maybe everybody is right and maybe and not, and stuttering. And we learned already also, as you quoted the Bible, what is Amalek? Amalek in Hebrew, it's the same amount of letters as Safek. Safek means when you're not sure, when you are in, you ask yourself questions. And we cannot have that situation. And therefore, our organization is educating the next generation of Israeli leaders. You can see everything on our website, as proud Jews who are not afraid to say this land is ours. We have to apply Israeli sovereignty over it. And you know what, David? A lot of Arabs are with us. They don't want a Palestinian state.
Well, I understand that. Is there any willpower? Is there any strength in the government, even the new government, to extend sovereignty? We know that prior to the election, a couple of times, Bibi has spoken about extending sovereignty. Even Naftali Bennett, before he became Prime Minister and seemed to change completely, was talking about extending sovereignty, at least into Area C. From a practical political point of view, Nadia, can we have hope? What do you, or is it a reality to expect that the government could make a decision?
So to answer your question, that is why we are starting with the Jordan Valley first, because I forgot to add that one of the main reasons that we're promoting the Jordan Valley first is because there's an incredible consensus here in Israel on the left, on the right, and also on the Zionist left. You won't believe it, but we are founding and there's going to be the launching of the lobby in the Knesset for the application of Israeli sovereignty over the Jordan Valley first. And I always add the word first to make sure that nobody thinks that we're going to give up on any other part of Judea and Samaria. But together with many people on the left, we are at least in agreement about the Jordan Valley. I'm talking about people like former Labour Party member, former Minister of of Agriculture, Avram Katz-Oz. He was talking at our lectures and our conference a few weeks ago, more right-wing than any right-winger. The Jordan Valley first, even Benny Gantz spoke about it, and of course, Bibi Netanyahu. And what we need to do now is, we know that Prime Minister Netanyahu is always being very careful, and he is also in favor of sovereignty over the Jordan Valley first, but as on condition that there will be American support. And we, therefore, we think, of course, that it should be done no matter what, because sometimes Israel has to do things even if it doesn't have the American support, and in the end, the Americans will follow and will respect, because we're not supposed to be acting like state number 51 or 52 from the US aid. But luckily, hopefully, very soon there will be another administration in America too. And they're supporting, they also support the application of Israeli sovereignty over the entire Judea and Samaria. I'm talking, of course, about the Republicans. And therefore, to summarize, there is a very big consensus about the Jordan Valley first. That can be done even now, because Prime Minister Netanyahu can stand firm in front of, even if in front of the Biden administration, and say, you have to respect the will of the majority of the people here in Israel, left and right. And about the continuation, about the rest of Judea and Samaria, we can do that as step number 2. And we will do that, please God. We'll bring another 1 million Jews to Judea and Samaria. But let's start with the Jordan Valley first. And if any of you is in the country on June 28th, which is very soon, we invite you, contact me, and we invite you to come to the festive opening and launching of the lobby in the Knesset for the application of the Israeli sovereignty over the Jordan Valley, headed by a member of Knesset, Dan Iluz from the Likud, and member of Knesset, Yossi Tayeb from Shas. Call me and we'll get you in. It will be a very special event.
It sounds great. I might talk to you about whether you can facilitate Robert Gregory meeting any of those people in the next week or so while he's in Israel. What's your relationship like with the we know a couple of other organizations that are supporting the Jewish community in Yehuda and Shomron. I'm thinking of the Nahala movement, of Regavim, also, right of center activist groups. Do you work together with them at all?
We are all friends and we all work together, and we also work each one specifically on his topic. I like the idea and the fact that there's different organizations, because each organization focuses on something different. And then we also work together when we need to work together. And it's like doubling or even tripling or more the force of working for Judea and Samaria. Regavim does an amazing job at showing the world the legal work for Judea and Samaria whenever there is illegal Arab trespassing or building, and that's their niche. That's their niche. Nachala is doing an incredible work of promoting the creation of Eviatar and other Jewish communities here and there. And there's also in Tier 2, and there's other organizations. And it's very important that our niche now is the application of Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, because we saw in 2005 that building only settlement is not enough. Unfortunately, it's super important, and we have to continue. And I wish we could build another 100 new communities. But if we don't have the application of sovereignty to protect those communities, we saw how in Gush Katif in 2005, within 6 days, those communities were destroyed. And therefore, in order to protect the work of Nachala and of Regavim and of the others, we need the sovereignty. That is our niche. That is the niche of the political plan that will protect the entire settlement enterprise in Judea and Samaria. And therefore, we complement each other, and may God, give blessings to all of us.
Nadia, well, you're talking to the only Jewish organisation in Australia that has as its formal policy that Yehuda and Shomron is part of Israel. No question. That's just that's just core policy for us. But what is the role of the diaspora? Because we have a number of Jewish organisations in this country as well who are talking about even withdrawal from the areas in which Jewish communities exist. Very few, I can't think of another one other than us, that are quite clear that sovereignty should be extended. In America, of course, the voices are much louder, and there are a whole range of left-wing Jewish organisations that are almost anti-Zionist. What comments and advice can you give to Jews in the diaspora?
Well, you know, I have a friend who went on shlichut. He went on shlichut to Belgium for a few years, and he became the head of a local Jewish school. When he was interviewed, they asked him, how do you see your job as the headmaster, as the head of this school here? And how do you see the future of the school here? And he answered, I hope that thanks to my work, the school will close as soon as possible. I said, what? He said, yes, because I hope everybody will come to Israel. So obviously the main question is that what I very much want to tell you is, and I don't do this out of giving, I come myself from Mid Aliyah. It's a choice one makes when you live abroad. You decide to be, you know, it's like a soccer match. I come from Belgium, so my father used to bring me to soccer matches. So you can be on the field or you can be on the side. We're watching watching the game, and watching the game is also interesting. But I suggest to be on the field. So that's number one. Come to Israel, make Aliyah. We need you on the field. But if you still decide to be on the sides, it's also very important. And there, I turn to your group, your organization. We need you in Hasbara. We need you to lobby your governments and to explain to them that to promote the idea of a Palestinian state is to promote not only the destruction of Israel, but those who promote the idea of a Palestinian state also promote a bad life to Arabs, because as our friend, I have a few Arab friends, believe it or not, who tell me, like Sheikh Jabri in Hebron, or Bassem Eid in Jericho, or Sheikh Tamimi in Ramallah, and they say, we are sick and tired of the leftist Jews pushing down our throat the idea of a Palestinian state, when it is the most immoral thing ever. A Palestinian state would mean a state where, and they tell us, you can quote us saying, we prefer to be residents under Israeli sovereignty rather than citizens in an Islamo-fascist Palestinian state where we have no rights, where the women have no rights, etc. And that has to be explained to your governments. In addition, you also have to explain and lobby your governments that promoting a Palestinian state is basically helping those who have as a slogan, the following slogan. It's all over the Palestinian Authority, unfortunately. First the Saturday people, then the Sunday people.
Yeah.
You have to explain to the non-Jewish people, they first want to destroy the Jewish state, but that's there, as we say, that's the appetizer.
Yeah.
Then they want to destroy the Saturday people, and then the Christians.
Yeah.
The real war here is not about whether Nadia Matar lives in this or that settlement. The real war here is between between the radical Islam and the Western civilization. And those who want the creation of a Palestinian state are helping radical Islam not only destroy Israel, but the next step is to turn Europe into Eurabia and America into an Islamo state also. And therefore, the battle here is much larger. You have to zoom out. And that is what you, as long as, before you make Aliyah, when you still live abroad, that has to be brought to your politicians, to your public figures and to explain that to them.
Well
And in
put.
addition, I'm not going to hide it, we need, the left here in Israel has incredible financial support from different anti-Israeli or NGOs. It's always uncomfortable to ask, but we have only you. And we, our organization and the different organizations that you mentioned, we also need the financial support of Jews who believe in what we believe. We put out a newspaper. I'm just giving an example, and I'm not going to pledge here, but I'm just explaining to you how much money they have, as you know. Their weekly demonstrations against Netanyahu and against the government, hundreds of thousands of dollars. When we have a newspaper, about 70 newspaper, that we can only put out twice a year because it costs so much money. So for those who can also help us financially, I'm not going to be ashamed to say you can do that too. So you have lobbying, you have hasbara, you have helping the organizations here. There's a lot of work to do there abroad and making sure that your next generation of Jews know and are aware of what is going on here. Hasbara, education, and helping those who are on the right side of the map.
Okay. I can see we've got a lot of questions, so I'll just do our 1 minute promotion now and then we'll move into questions. As we do every week, if you're not yet doing something active to support AJA, at the end of the event, please go to the website jewishassociation.org.au, where you can sign up to the email list, you can make a contribution, and make sure you follow the Facebook page for updates, news and views on a daily basis. And just to let you know what we have coming up next week, we have a very interesting voice from Israel, another one, a Nobel Prize winner, Professor Robert Allman, or Yisrael Allman, who's part of the Professors for a Strong Israel. And he won his Nobel Prize in complex mathematical theory that I won't even begin to describe, but he's used that as a basis to argue why giving away land is strategically foolish. And in view of some of the leftist academic activism in Israel, it will be very, very interesting to hear someone of that caliber argue the other side. Now, we've got a whole series of questions. I know Hugh Kitson wants to make a clear statement, a quick statement. So Hugh, if you can unmute and make your contribution now.
Well, good morning, everyone from England. I'd like to really take this opportunity to thank everyone who contributed to the appeal towards whose land. Thank you very much, David, for facilitating the whole thing. But I'd like to mention Elaine Black, because it was Elaine who first approached you to do this. Elaine has been a friend of mine for a good many years now, and she's very supportive of this project. She's a true Zionist, like me, and also like Richard Kemp. I'd like to say thanks on behalf of Richard Kemp. But there's someone else too who has been a major donor towards the project, and that's Pauline Opat, and she was mentioned on your news bulletin last week. So thank you very much, Pauline. I know you're watching this morning. If I may, I'd like to offer a word of encouragement. Last night, I was at an Israeli embassy event in London. It was to celebrate the 75th. And I had a very unexpected and very interesting conversation with someone who I didn't expect to see there. And that is former British Prime Minister Theresa May. Now, what is not generally known about Theresa May is that she is a very strong pro-Israel advocate. And she was actually Prime Minister at the time of Obama's awful Resolution 2334, which the USA, they didn't veto it, they abstained, and consequently it got through. Now, that was partly authored probably largely authored by the British Foreign Office behind Theresa May's back. And after it was passed, she berated John Kerry very publicly over the whole thing and made it clear that she did not support it at all. And I do believe that her action prevented the thing from going further, because Resolution 2334 was a Chapter 6 resolution. And I asked her this question last night. She didn't know the answer, that Obama was planning in the final couple of days of his presidency of pushing through a Chapter 7 resolution, which would have outlawed any Jewish presence in not only your historic capital city, but in the whole of Judea and Samaria. The fact that that is contrary to the UN Charter, Article 80 of the UN Charter, is beside the point. But what that has done, it's opened a dialogue for me with Theresa May, because we need MPs. She's still a backbench MP in the Conservative Party. And it's very, very necessary, I believe, to get politicians to stand up for Israel. Now, I'm going to send her whose land, and I'm going to brief her with all that's going on.
We've got a long list of people.
Okay.
So
but I just want to encourage you in that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Hugh. Now, I'm going to give some preference here to people who don't commonly ask questions. So, Victor, can you unmute and ask your question? And I'll just remind people to keep things as brief as possible. Victor, can you unmute? No.
Yeah. Okay, I'm muted.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Nadia. You're doing a fantastic job. But I'd like to ask you, why don't you push the fact that there is already a Palestinian state? It's called Jordan. It's a land that was given to them 70% of the British mandate. So why do they want our land as well? Push for that line. Israeli government should push for that line. It has to be accepted. Okay, that's all I want to say.
That's a good point. It was actually 77%, but
yes.
Yeah.
70. It was 78. Yeah. Can you hear me? Because I never know if you hear me.
All good.
Victor, I'll give you and we have a debate within the sovereignty movement about that, because at the very beginning of the sovereignty movement, we gave a platform to different opinions, and you are expressing the view of Professor Aryeh Eldad and of Eliakim Etzni, who indeed promoted. Somebody's knocking on my door here. Who indeed promoted Jordan is Palestine. There's a debate between us here, because some people think that Jordan is also the land of Israel, and why should, if we agree to give away that 78%, why it's already something we shouldn't agree to either, and they shouldn't have no Palestinian state at all, or a Palestinian state in Egypt or anywhere else. But Victor, you do represent a part of a group in the sovereignty movement who are saying so, and I agree with you that one thing is for sure: no Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria. As you very well know, though, the king, that's the last thing he wants, is a Palestinian state. As we know, Jordan is being ruled by a minority, and I don't know if we want it to turn into a Palestinian state. So we have to think very, very carefully about what you suggest.
Yeah. Okay. Who do we have next? Roland.
I just want to confirm what the previous, before Victor, I forgot his name, and to strengthen exactly what you asked before, what should be done. Whatever politicians you know, whether it's in Australia, in England, and everywhere, who are on our side, maybe convince them also, if you can arrange for them to come to Israel and to see. We also arrange tours for such people who already know that they're on our side. But you say a picture is 1,000 words, right? So if you can arrange that they would come to Israel and connect them to us, we'll give them a tour. Will they be able to see and meet the people? That is also one more thing that can be done in the list of many things that diaspora Jews can do abroad in order to strengthen Israel.
Okay. Leon, if you can unmute, please, and ask your brief question.
I believe that every word that you uttered this evening is worthy of being engraved in stone. Could you tell us, please, how do you combat the argument, the demographic argument of those who use it against sovereignty?
Good question.
Thank you. A very important question. And the answer is the following. You have to tell the people who are promote the Palestinian state that they are the ones who are overturning demography. Today, west of the Jordan River, between the Jordan River and the sea, there is a Jewish majority. And I include Gaza and I include Judea and Samaria. There's a Jewish majority today. Those who promote the Palestinian state claim that because of demography, we should give away Judea and Samaria and allow them to have a Palestinian state there in order to keep a Jewish majority. That is deceiving the public, because if, God forbid, there would be a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, the border with Jordan would be completely open, and there will be an influx of millions of Arabs who are just waiting to move to Judea and Samaria, and the Jewish majority that is existing until now would be overturned with that Palestinian state, and then we would lose our Jewish majority and become a minority east of the Jordan River. Then people will tell you, I know what people will answer. They'll say, oh, but they will be there in the Palestinian state. They won't be in the little state of Tel Aviv, which is, again, deceiving the public, because we know if, God forbid, there's a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, with millions of additional Arabs who will be coming and as a big influx, they will just have to walk through the border and invade Tel Aviv and take over. And thus, those who are threatening the Jewish majority are those who promote a Palestinian state. But indeed, you are right in asking about demography, because sovereignty is also not so simple. I always say that the Palestinian state is suicide. Sovereignty is a headache. Against suicide, you can't do anything and you shouldn't commit suicide. But when you have a headache, you have to think about taking some pills to prevent headaches. So the headache is indeed what you're asking. With sovereignty, what do we do? The question you really ask is, what do we do with the 1.8 million Arabs who are in Judea and Samaria? And when you, Nadia, promote sovereignty, you are, in the end, you also want to take charge over that population. And what's going to be their status? That is basically the question many people ask us. And I, together with Judith Katzover, we answer up front. We cannot give those people citizenship, because then you give another close to 2 million Arabs citizenship in the state of Israel, which will threaten our Jewish majority, as the person who just asked the question is worried about. And therefore, what we suggest, and we don't have to be ashamed about it, is to give them the same status as the Arabs in Jerusalem. I don't know if all of you know, but in Jerusalem, there's 300,000 Arabs who are residents and not citizens. You know that the difference between a resident and a citizen is very simple. They have all the same rights, but the residents do not have the right to vote in the Knesset. And we cannot give them the tool to vote in the Knesset and turn Israel and give them our democratic tools to overturn Israel from a Jewish state to a, God forbid, an Arab state. So then people will cry out and say, oy vey, what about democracy? You are going to have people with two different status? So first of all, in Puerto Rico, they have it also. There's different status. We don't have to be shocked. And Israel is known as a Jewish state and a democratic state. But when things, when you have two values that go against each other, I am saying it very clearly. I am willing to a little bit harm the democratic value, but in order not to commit suicide. And I know that by giving the Arabs residency, I don't have to worry because they're going to have a much better life than in any other Arab country. So therefore, to sum up, we want sovereignty between the sea and the Jordan River. That is the only way to keep a Jewish majority. We will bring another 1 million Jews from abroad who should come and will come on Aliyah when the Israeli government will promote Aliyah and will give such great rights to the Jews who will come on Aliyah in order to keep a Jewish majority. And to the 1.8 million Arabs who are here, we will suggest that is basically the Smotrich plan. We will offer them 3 things. You want to live with us? You can get private rights, but no national rights. You want to live with us? You will be living with us as residents with a path to citizenship for those few who want to have citizenship, maybe in quite a few years from now. Those who don't want to live in a Jewish state, we will offer them the same way it was moral to pay the Jews of Gush Katif to leave. Anybody who wants to leave, any Arab who wants to leave, we will help you to leave. If you want, we will respect your wish to live in, if you want to live in Europe, you want to live in an Arab state, we're not going to force you to be in a Jewish state. And those who are going to continue to fight us, we will fight you. Those are the 3 options we will give the Arabs who are here. And believe me, the moment they feel that we know that what we want and that there is no hope for a Palestinian state, they will respect that, because they try to promote the idea that there is Arab terror because of despair. They despair, that's why there's terror. It's exactly the opposite. There's Arab terror because they still have the hope to have a Palestinian state. They still have the hope to take our land away and God forbid expel us from here, because as long as there's no sovereignty, they have that hope. When we will apply Israeli sovereignty, we will crush the hope once and for all for a Palestinian state, and many, many Arabs will finally respect that, and then they will be able to choose one of the 3 options that I said before. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, we've got a few quick last questions. Ron, if you can unmute and ask yours.
Guten Abend. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
You mentioned the hesitancy after the 6-day war and how calamitous it was. Do you think that Israel is doing the same thing, hesitating with E1, just outside the Ma'ale of Adumim? And would they also succumb to American and European pressure if they tried the same thing with the Jordan Valley?
Therefore, yes, there is. We have a prime minister who does many, many good things, but who is also very careful. And we are here to give him the strength to remind him that he won the elections and that the overwhelming majority of the Jewish people want sovereignty over the Jordan Valley first and over E1. You mentioned E1. For those who don't know, E1 is the area in Ma'ale Adumim that connects Ma'ale Adumim with Jerusalem. And we must have sovereignty over that area because the Arabs are eyeing that and trying to take that area over in order to disconnect us from Jerusalem. Is your question, is it possible? If we all get together with you abroad and us here, and give Bibi Netanyahu the strength and the understanding that we are behind him and that a lot of countries are behind him, and give him the okay, then please God, I'm an optimist. An optimist is somebody who says the situation is not easy, very complicated, a lot of trouble, but if we work together and with God's help, please God, then we will succeed. So let's get to work.
Okay, Morris, unmute and ask your question brief, please.
Shalom, Nadia. Kodem Kol, I want to thank you for assisting in securing an interview.
There you are.
How are you? In securing an interview with Rabbi D. Nadia, why, maybe this is a question for Regavim, but why have for years consecutive governments turned a blind eye and done nothing regarding the European Union's funding of illegal Palestinian construction in Area C?
I am sure that if you ask our friend Meir Deutsch from Regavim, I don't know. You have to ask him, of course. But the question is, I wish we knew. I know why. I don't know. I can't explain it. I can't explain it. We've had, but on the other hand, maybe the answer is we see how difficult it is even now when we have 64, a majority in the Knesset of 64. But so many little people in different positions are doing everything to prevent this government from ruling, from governing. The civil administration for so many years has been in the hands of people who believe in the Palestinian state, unfortunately. Now you're going to ask why. That's another question. How come they took over? And the answer is that we have to have a complete overhaul of the entire system to put into the position also of small, so-called small positions, whether the civil administration has to be completely abolished, by the way. And why is that? Because we allowed the left to continue to rule, even though we officially won the elections. And now the time has come to, for the first time ever, there is a government here with so many ministers who actually want to govern all and rule. And that is why the left, by the way, is going wild, because they see that there's people like Simcha Rotman and Smotrich and others who finally not only want to win the elections, but want to govern. And we hope and pray that the prime minister will have the strength, and we have to give him the strength to enable all those wonderful people in the government to implement the right-wing policies, and maybe then finally we'll be able to change what you just mentioned.
I don't want to open up the can of worms of the judicial reform, but we do speak to Regavim also. We know Naomi Khan quite well. And one of the reasons why Smotrich and others, Smotrich has a background with Regavim, I think, and he was one of the founders, that's right. A number of decisions about land use, about the illegal building, some bizarre decisions have been made by the Israeli courts. And
absolutely. That's to answer the question. Obviously, that's why we need judicial reform. That's why we're very tense and seeing what's going on right now in the Knesset at this very moment. But the question before was, why didn't that happen even before?
yeah.
Because we have to put, I'll tell you, because we have to put our people in key positions. For so many years, we were busy, the national camp, with building communities, and it's very important, but we abandoned a little too much the area of the media. We did not put people in key positions in the media, in the justice system, in the economic system, and little by little things are changing now. And that is also why it is so important to promote the next generation and the sovereignty youth and the youth in general, so that we should not only have a right-wing minister of treasury or right-wing minister of police or a right-wing prime minister, also all the key people in different major positions who are less known but who take many decisions, and especially lawyers and judges, have to be from the right wing.
Reuven, over to you.
My question is, I believe next week there's going to be approvals for so many housing units to be constructed throughout Judea and Samaria. And in that list, the smallest amount of units to be developed in Hebron, Kiryat Arba. I don't understand why that's the most important area. Do you think for security reasons? And also the Chabad are very much in favor of sovereignty and under no circumstance to let this land for peace. And the Lubavitcher always stressed that. He went so far as to finance himself a yeshiva in Hebron. What's going on there? Can you clarify?
What is the question? I didn't understand the question.
Why in Hebron is the least amount of housing units to be developed in the proposal, the upcoming proposal, because of security reasons? And do you deal with Chabad? Do you have any dealings with Chabad?
I think that not only in Hebron, I think that there's not enough Jewish building all over Judea and Samaria.
Sure.
And Hebron is just one of the many places that need a government to build there. It is unbelievable that it is amazing individuals who took upon themselves to buy from Arabs and to build and to think. We have to reach the point where the government of Israel proudly will build in the city of the fathers and the sons and the forefathers and the grandchildren, Hebron, has to be a major, major Jewish city. It is the sister city of Jerusalem. So to answer your question, I agree with you. To answer the question of why is this and why is that is a little bit difficult. I don't answer questions. I don't spend my time asking why. I try to do everything together with all our members and the other organizations. There is a problem. Let's try to fix it. Why it happened, we know. Too many years of the left wing in power. Let's go to work and change it.
Nadia, you're doing tremendous work. How do people find out more about your organization? Of course, if someone wanted to contribute, what's the website or how do they go?
I appreciate you. First of all, I urge people to support your work, David, AGA, and you're doing incredible work. It's so rare that we have a platform to be able to express and explain, and that is number one. So first, a pledge to support David and his organization. If anything is left afterwards, then you can come to our website. In Hebrew, the word sovereignty is Ribonut, RIBONUT.co.il. There is Hebrew, and click on the English. You will also see the wonderful pictures and videos of our latest amazing and uplifting youth convention. And one of the items on the website there is how to contribute or support. I don't exactly remember the exact name. And we have JGive, so you can also give however you can, whether it's dollars or whatever currency you want. Any help is very much needed, very much appreciated. And we thank you very, very much, David, for giving us, in the name of Judith Katzover, myself, and the entire sovereignty movement, known previously as the Women in Green, we thank you for giving us that platform, and we thank you for your support.
Well, please send the link by email afterwards, Nadia, and I'll include it in our follow-up newsletter, which will go out on Friday, hopefully. So
thank you so much, and chazak, chazak. And as we read, we know that we read Shlach last week. There's a difference in the parsha. You guys are reading it this week, and the main item of that is, of course, the spies and the 10 spies who went to spy, and 8 spies were discouraged, and only Kalev ben Yefuneh and Yoshua ben Nun had the courage to stand firm, even though they were at the time a minority, and they said, let us go up and conquer the land, for this is our land, and let us not be afraid. And that is what we feel with you guys at AGA, and all of us represent today, thank God, not a minority, but a majority of the Jewish people who say the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel, based on the Torah of Israel, and we're all going to work together to fulfill God's commandment of inheriting this land and giving it over to our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Thank you very much. Chazak ve'ematz.
Thank you again, Nadia. Just before we go, a reminder that the L'chaim program with Morris Klein is on now on 3ZZZ FM 92.3 or 3ZZZ.com.au. That's all we have, and we look forward to seeing you next week with our Nobel Prize winning academic, one of the professors for a strong Israel, which should be most interesting, and first time we will have hosted a Nobel Prize winner. So good night to all, and thank you for joining us.